ECOWAS takes steps to end coups, terrorism and insecurity in the sub-region.
Our shared challenge, therefore, is to ensure that internal divisions do not erode the collective strength we have built over decades.
Supply of illicit drugs to bandits gets nabbed by NDLEA operatives.
Federal government partners Kano State in the completion of 6.7 kilometers road project.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on sustaining democracy in West Africa.
In the last couple of years, West Africa has been the center of attention with an upsurge in military coups, raising the fundamental question on the region's democratic integrity.
And just about a week ago or more, the Republic of Benin escaped being thrown into chaos after an attempted coup was foiled.
According to reports, the coup was thwarted when a group of soldiers known in that country as the Military Committee for Refoundation announced on the state television that they had ousted President Patrice Talon. However, the timely intervention of President Bola Tinubu and the Nigerian Air Force saved the day.
Now, from Guinea-Bissau to Mali, Burkina Faso and Chad, military takeovers are becoming the norm. School of thoughts also believe that these coups are reshaping the political landscape of West Africa and ultimately undermining democracy.
Interestingly, but worrisome, this development is reportedly peculiar to West Africa and most times stems from weak democratic institutions and poor governance.
Now, it would interest you to know that since 1975, the sub-region has reportedly experienced more than 45 coups, although the Economic Community of West African States significantly plays a major role in maintaining peace and stability within the sub-region through imposition of sanctions and diplomatic pressure for civilian rule. Many claim the regional bloc has consistently been undermined by this unconstitutional change of government.
That's true, Jumai. The frequency of these military interventions is a worry and basically it is worrisome, and basically it highlights the fragile state of democracy in West Africa. Already, 4 countries are under military rule, while 3 have already left the regional bloc. So, the question is, how can democracy be sustained in West Africa amid these offsets? I am Ademola Adeoye. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, the first for the week.
And at the 68th Ordinary Session of the Authority of ECOWAS held in Abuja, heads of state and government of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, resolved to take proactive measures to put an end to the spread of military coups. And on that note, I'm Juma Yusuf, joining my colleague Ademola to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. Today we're live from the nation's capital on the network service of the NTA. We thank you so much for joining us this morning. We broadcast live on the network service. And in a moment, we will be bringing you the highlights of the morning news and much later, newspaper review. Mina Daniels is up for newspaper highlights this morning for news. Good morning, Mina. You're looking rested. I believe it was a restful weekend for you too.
It was, I tell you. Thank you so much, Jumai. Good morning to you and Demola. Here now is the news. Heads of state and government of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have resolved to take proactive measures and form a united front to put an end to the spread of military coups, terrorism, and other forms of insecurity across the sub-region. The decision was taken at the 68th Ordinary Session of the Authority of ECOWAS held in Abuja.
We must strengthen collective action, integrated intelligence systems, coordinated border operations, and the operationalization of ECOWAS standby force for counter-terrorism.
Our shared challenge, therefore, is to ensure that internal divisions do not erode the collective strength we have built over decades.
The presidency says some Nigerian opposition politicians regrouping in a platform are seeking scapegoats to confuse the polity in a desperate search for cheap political gains. A statement by Bayo Onanuga, the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, says the politicians are on Sunday alleged a threat to multi-party democracy because many top politicians are joining the governing All Progressives Congress of their own free will. He notes that the Nigerian Constitution guarantees freedom of association and affords the people the right to change their political leanings at any time of their choosing. The presidential spokesman adds that none of the people who joined the governing APC was pressured to do so. They are being motivated by the noticeable gains of President Bola Tinubu's reform program. The statement further notes the claim by the politician that the president is using anti-graft agencies to go after oppositions and has no element of truth. The long-awaited completion of the Wuju Road, a critical project with significant environmental and public health implications, will soon become a reality as the federal government partners with the state to finance its construction. During an assessment visit to the site, Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf disclosed that President Bola Tinubu has directed the immediate resumption of work on the project. And 3 weeks after escaping arrests at his home in Kuta Shiroro local government area of Niger State, a notorious supplier of illicit drugs to bandits, Sani Mohammed, popularly known as Gamboli, operating in the area, has been arrested by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, at his hideout. A clandestine codeine syrup factory was also uncovered in Abia State during the week in review. Those are the news highlights for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Jummai and Demola after this break.
TerraQ or Rap Joy, unleash taste.
Give more strength to your hair with Mega Growth Leave-In Strengthener. It's infused with nourishing oils and conditioning proteins, so you can say goodbye to hair breakage. Wow! Mega Growth Leave-In Strengthener.
Full House Refreshment is goodness to go round. The Peak Yogurt Drink 1 liter Full House pack with more refreshment, which contains fresh cow milk. Enjoy Full House goodness filled with essential vitamin and minerals. Peak, reach for your peak.
And the National Productivity Order of Merit Award goes to...
The only tomato paste manufacturer to win the National Productivity Order of Merit Award by the Federal Government of Nigeria, endorsed by the Association of Private Medical Practitioners of Nigeria. This is an evidence of 100% natural goodness. Eat healthy to live longer. Buy now and enjoy up to 20% discount.
In today's fast-paced world, staying ahead demands peak performance from our bodies. Like never before, our bodies need an optimum supply of essential nutrients, and Supermalt supports our daily nutritional needs.
Supermalt has 20 essential vitamins, minerals, and natural extracts for overall health and wellness. One Supermalt a day gives you energy and vitality, improves your mental performance, and supports your immunity.
Alright everyone, no put your ears, make we talk. Shout my teeth fresh now, but you know, I beg no be slow. Ever heard of Colgate, the #1 oral care brand in the world? For zero cavities and long-lasting fresh breath. Mom, it's your time to brush. Mama and Papa buy up, use up and shine your smile. No more cover mouth.
Little body, big moves. Little brain, big learning. Your little child is eager to do big things. Every sachet comes with the nutrients they need every day. Made from natural grains, contains protein and fortified with iron to support their physical growth, learning, and development. So you can fully enjoy your little one's big moments of growth.
Dear Santa, I have been a very good boy. Please, can I have a special breakfast for Christmas? And also, I want to put a smile on my mommy's face. It's Big Santa! Thank you, Big Santa.
Enjoy Christmas at its peak. Imagine lovely meals you can cook with these ingredients. You spend heavily, but no guarantee of a tasty meal. Not making a right choice of seasoning cube can ruin your meal, money, and confidence. For a tasty meal, do not compromise. Choose Gold.
Use Terra Gold for the rich, consistent taste your loved ones crave for. Good for soups, stews, and jollof. Terra Gold. 1 cube, endless possibilities.
My champs, they use energy at school.
Your champs need nourishing energy. Give them Milo at breakfast.
It has nutrients that support energy release.
No buy am.
But why?
No see say this big bull bag of rice no get the new big bull holographic seal.
Not true.
Introducing the Big Bull Holographic Seal Tape, your favorite authentic Big Bull rice, 50 kg and 25 kg. Now with holographic seal tape. This is to ensure you get the premium product from Big Bull Rice. Do not buy if the holographic seal tape is not on the bag or is broken. Big Bull Rice. Tasty rice nourished you.
This December, all eyes in Morocco. Africa assemble. All dreams are heading one way.
All passion, all fire.
Because here, you play different. Choose your side.
Show your colors.
Bring your flag. And we welcome you to Morocco.
Get ready for the drama, the passion, the pride. From 21st December 2025 to 18th January 2026, history will be made again.
You guys ready?
Time to wake up. Afro Sports, your freedom of sport.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and newspaper review is up next.
Our newspaper reviewer, Chukudi Okoli-Ubaja, is here. Chuks, how was your weekend?
Before you said our newspaper reviewer, Chukudi, you did... no, carry cough, give me. Let me start. Ladies first. Hello.
Good morning.
You take a choco.
He's giving me two.
Yeah, it's a choco tea. Let me shift.
You know, it's dry.
It's dry, and you know
it's Hamilton. So
it's foggy,
My
it's
own
dusty.
is just a suppressor. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Good to see you guys.
It's see you too. I hope you had a good weekend.
Yes, I did. I did. I went to Aparapo, end of year.
Where's that part of?
I wouldn't lie to you. I took my 3rd bottle of beer this year.
hold it there.
Like
hold it there. Let's quickly go to the papers. We begin with the Business NG this morning, and above the masthead of the Business NG, Diri orders autopsy into Bielsa Deputy Governor's death. You find the details on page 2. Quite an unfortunate death there. Well, they will find out the details. And on page 10, Tinubu may reshuffle cabinet again as Wike Matawali linked to defense charges. The report, you find all the details on page 10. And below the masthead of the Business in Nigeria, FCCPC probes rising airfares as Nigerians decry costly flights. You find the details on page 2. Quite a disturbing scenario happening there. And below the picture story, telecom failures put Minister Bosun Tijani under public scrutiny. And Nigeria's 3rd quarter 2025 imports dominated by manufactured goods. Find the details all on page 2. And at the side piece of the picture story, CBN targets 825 billion naira in final 2025 bond and treasury bills. You find the details inside the paper. And Abuja blackout deepens. Security fears as residents slam AEDC's silence. You find the details also on page 2. And the headlines: tax reform countdown, SMEs gain, higher earners pay more. You find all the details if you go to page 2. Let me quickly go to this Nigerian newspaper, and at the side piece of the masthead, 2025 budget, economists flam FG's 39% implementation of capital allocation. Details on page 17. And at the side piece of the picture story, ECOWAS cracks down on coup, reorders regional power structure. Details on page 16. Rivers Ijaw People's Congress endorsed Tinubu for 2nd term. Find the details on page 27. Nigeria's middle class slips into poverty. With riders, workers, professionals, entrepreneurs lament shrinking incomes, rising living costs. Details on page 6. And the headlines: 2027, it's turn of the South, says ADC chieftain El Rufai, with riders as opposition leaders warn of danger of one-party state. They're just blowing hot air, presidency counters claims. Details on page 5. And the picture story you see there, FCT Minister Yoso Wike, his wife, Justice Suzette Eberechi Wike, son Wakim, political associates and well-wishers cut birthday cake to mark his birthday at the weekend. Mr. Domola, wish the minister a happy birthday too.
Okay, all right. So I think I have the Blueprint newspaper, and just above that nameplate, we have Yewalda wife bag chieftaincy title, Monarch One security reform sustained. Details of that story can be found on page 8. Africa must speak with coherence on global politics. Abbas, details on page 6. Parents of rescued Niger school children. Our kids survived on mud water. Tuwongero Meunkuka once daily. Details of that story can be found on page 17. FIRS to NEF, MOU with France won't undermine Nigeria's tax database. Details of that story can be found on page 8. With Vision 2050 under threat, ECOWAS plans joint counter-terrorism force, names Dangote pioneer chair of Business Council. Details of that story is on page 8. A private jet with 11 on board crash lands in Kano. Details on page 10. ICPC recovers 37.44 billion naira, $2.35 million in 2025. Details on page 6. Naira stands at $1,454 in FX market. Pregnant mother, 18-month-old baby killed in Kano. Details on page 10. Chooks.
First of all, the Bayelsa deputy governor. I mean, it's really unfortunate. Yeah. You know, the tail end of last week, that's the working week, we said what would take him to ICU. Did he have a history of illness and all that? You know, a doctor will tell me when this kind of thing happens, it's usually one of two twin killers, a heart attack or a stroke. You know, cancer does not drop you immediately. No, you know, whatever happens, may he so rest in perfect peace. It's very important. Amen. It tells us again that my people will say, Onyema Bono, who knows where he is? What they're trying to say is that nobody actually holds his life in his pocket. Anything can happen to a man at any time. Yes. May we live well with our neighbors. Amen. Because we don't know when he's going to call us home. May he so rest in perfect peace. ECOWAS leaders want integrated intelligence systems. That's part of the resolutions. But the one that interests me more is that the regional body has reaffirmed its readiness to deploy the ECOWAS standby force to defend constitutionalism. I like that.
You know, there used to be this ECOMOG.
Yes. Yeah, ECOMOG was being used to go,
in Sierra Leone
and Liberia.
Yeah.
Nigerian soldiers stopped the wars in Liberia and Nigerian soldiers stopped the wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that other people were not part of ECOMOG,
but
we created a backbone.
Yes.
And that takes me to Nigeria. May it not happen here. What they are talking about can only work if Nigeria itself is free from coups. Otherwise, God forbid, if a coup happens there, we will come into question Nigeria. So what is intoned here is that we are an avowed democracy respecter. And I pray that it's going to continue like that. Nigeria must keep on giving a good example of how things should work here.
Yeah.
I said the other time, I'm one of those who I will be stubborn towards a man I didn't elect as my president. Of course, it's not every president that comes in that you are part of electing, but you participated in the election.
The process.
That makes you a free man. We should keep on thinking like that. Military rule does not favor anybody. Forget the things you hear from. Don't worry now. Very soon, one of their friends will say, it's my turn now. Are you going to stay there forever? Watch them. Give them just 5 more years. You know,
5 years is too long.
Don't you go see? Yeah, I agree with you. Nigeria's middle class slip into poverty. No wonder Demola has been complaining for a long time.
Today?
Not today.
The middle class have not existed in a long.
No, it was effectively wiped out.
Yes,
it is either
we don't
super
have a middle
rich
class
than the people who are
so
kissing
poor.
scholar.
Yes.
They are kissing scholar, you know. It's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate.
Incidentally, it seems that bracket has Devon and Chukudi in it.
Speak for yourself.
Jumai looks well fed. I'm not going to take it too much. There's a story about the NDLEA arresting fleeing bandit drug supplier in Niger. You know, after Babagana Zulum, I mentioned the NDLEA man as one of my champions in this country.
Yes.
I'm looking for good leaders, people who show that it can be done. Babagana Zulum is my number one. Whoever wants to get jealous, let them get jealous. I don't care.
What about Marwa?
Marwa? That's the NDLEA man now. This man,
and you know, he was also a governor. He was governor of Borno State before he went to Lagos. He was military governor.
Even as military governor, he also remember there was a time a bomb was planted when his convoy was passing. People got jealous even within his own constituency.
Yes.
Marwa has always been his own man. Please, let's hype these people when they happen. Let us keep on asserting that it is still good to be good, because evil is trying to swamp goodness in Nigeria. Good. That we can't let that happen. So it's deliberate when I hype these people.
2027 is turn of the South, says ADC chieftain. Why, as opposition leaders, warn of danger of one-party states.
One thing I like El-Rufai for, sometimes I say El-Rufai and Wiki, I tell them, sometimes we don't like the way you talk. But El-Rufai sticks to something. He has been saying it's the turn of the South. Nobody has written it in the Constitution that we're not to do 8 years. South to go. Nobody has. But because of the way Africa is, it's not going to work in the UK or US. You're not going to tell them that balderdash. Who will listen to you? Tell it to the Marines, you know? But in Africa, it is real. If you don't do that car arrangement, nakatakata,
everybody must.
That's where we are.
Everybody must eat the national cake.
That's what we think.
They must have a share.
You know, so call it a gentleman's agreement. It is what will sustain African democracy in Africa. Don't believe in African.
But we need to change. We need to change that gentleman agreement because I was not there, you were not there, he was not there. Who did the agreement on our behalf? I believe a Nigerian can come from any part of the country, contest and wish, unless we get to that point.
My dear Jumai, you know that you and I are soulmates.
Yeah.
Which American has ever told you, we don't like the Kennedy family? Why should they keep... Nobody said that.
Why did Bush
Do they give us good education?
Yes.
Good security? Good agriculture? Good health? I don't care whether one family wants to die in the White House. Their thinking is different.
Yes.
Now, our Peking ton, 9 kill Africa. I keep on saying it. I told you, the kind of analysis I hear on Nigerian television.
What do we need now? A mindset.
A total reorientation.
We need to reorientate ourselves. We need to change how we think.
We need to be Nigerian first before any other thing.
Thank you. A pan-Nigerian mentality. Don't tell me he's an Igbira man. Don't tell me. Doesn't he have 2 eyes like you? Doesn't he have 1 mouth? The things that unite humanity were created by God. The things that disunite us were created by man. But you keep on talking. Even people you expect to know will disappoint you.
Exactly.
They come out of their jeeps and talk balderdash.
Okay. Wiki had his birthday over the weekend.
Oh, my dear Wiki. He must have calmed down to observe a very nice birthday. I wish him well.
I see you smiling.
I wasn't there. I wasn't invited.
What happened?
I wasn't invited. I don't go to places I'm not invited to. Yes. It's very important.
Okay.
If you break the plate for there, you go pay.
Okay, Mr. Chukwudi, on that note, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
It's
too.
beautiful Monday morning.
Thank you.
Though all our voices are, just sort of cracking.
It's a sign of the times. Oh, it's seasonal.
It's seasonal.
Very soon you'll sing like the nightingale.
I hope so. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We appreciate you as always.
Oh, thank you so much for making me happy every morning.
So we'll take a break now. When we return, our conversation will begin. Don't go away.
You have no better friend and partner than Nigeria. Let this unveiling today be a call to conscience. Let our practitioners hold the line of truth. To the media, please inform with integrity and with a deep sense of patriotism. To our public officers, communicate with transparency. To citizens, please let us speak with empathy. Let us come together to become the voice of responsibility, the voice of the world that heals division, that inspires hope and drives development.
The world needs moms. With a splash of golden terra oil, a mom can transform a frown into a smile. Change no thanks into yes please. Resolve family feuds without blowing a whistle. Providing tasty family meals is all that matters. Where there are moms, there is love. Golden Terra Oil, pour pure love.
When malaria knocks you down,
you can be sure parasites are having a party in your system.
Welcome to our new kingdom, guys!
Comel, an effective weapon against malaria. Attacking the parasite army directly to give you express relief and get you back on your feet effectively. Comel on. Malaria gone.
Good, tasty food is worth living for. Worried about your oil? Every time you enjoy your favorite meal? Introducing Smart Balance. Smart Balance Rice Bran Oil is rich in Gamma Original. Golden Terra Smart Balance Oil reduces bad cholesterol.
Power Oil Light. Light enough for movement. Real enough for taste. Power Oil. My choice for my family. They always come back for seconds. I know why. Power Oil. My choice for my family.
My champs, they use energy at school.
Your champs need nourishing energy. Give them Milo at breakfast.
It has nutrients that support energy release.
Milo!
What are you giving me?
Guys, food is ready.
Cook to impress.
Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja. The city is moving. New voices, heavy drip, all heart. From the streets to the stage, this is the next Afrobeat star.
What are we here for? Let's Afrobeat star. Let's get nasty.
And the talents from all over showed up to own the room. But they're not alone.
Spiritual.
Gospel.
All chasing a slot to face the judges. Puffy T, SARS, Andrew Vibes, P Pride. Catch next Afrobeat star on
Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Just before we bring in our panel of guests for our conversation on sustaining democracy in West Africa, let's take this background report by Timothy Yusuf.
Sustaining democracy in West Africa is believed to be a complex issue, and recent events in Benin Republic and Guinea-Bissau highlight the challenges the region faces. The attempted coup in Benin Republic and the military takeover in Guinea-Bissau demonstrate the fragility of democratic institutions in the West African sub-region. To leverage these developments and promote democracy, analysts say it's essential to address the root causes of instability. They argue that weak democratic systems, poor governance, and excessive executive power contribute to military interventions. Strengthening institutions, promoting accountability, and ensuring inclusive governance are crucial steps, they emphasized. Experts lauded the economic community of West African states' condemnation of coups, deploying troops to restore stability in Benin Republic. The African Union (AU) has also expressed concern about the situation in Guinea-Bissau and called for a return to constitutional order. For the way forward, promoting accountability, transparency, and inclusive governance are key imperatives. Implementing policies to reduce poverty, inequality, and unemployment are also key factors for a turnaround. Stakeholders suggest that empowering ECOWAS and AU to promote democracy and stability in West Africa will be an added positive drive. By addressing these challenges and supporting regional efforts, West Africa can work towards sustaining democracy and promoting stability in the region. Let's now join our guest in the studio for more.
Thank you so much, Yusuf, for the background report. And we have here joining us in the studio to push this conversation and so that we can get more clarity on the situation on ground in West Africa. I have seated here in the studio Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense. Welcome to Good Morning. As always.
Foreign Affairs.
Foreign Affairs, sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yes, Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You're welcome to Good Morning. As always,
Good morning. Nice to see you all and compliment of the season.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. And we also have seated in the studio Dr. Abdul Razak Salih Ibrahim, Department of Political Science and International Relations, Nile University. I hope I got that right.
Yes,
thanks so
perfectly.
much for coming.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Good morning all.
Good morning to you. And joining us from our Lagos studio is Dr. Nicholas Idris Erame. Dr. Erame is a Senior Research Fellow and Head International Politics Nigeria Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, in Lagos. Dr. Erame, it's good to have you join us on this conversation.
To be here with you this morning.
Thank you. All right, let's come back to our studio right now. Ambassador Keshi, I mean, in the last few years now, we've seen a lot of, activities, especially in the West Africa region, and military coups. Right now, we have 4 countries under the military juntas. What do you think are the driving force, behind this upsurge?
Thank you for having me. I think that when you listen to your intro itself, you can actually situate where the problems are or where the real problem is. Africa or West Africa, in my view, do not have a democracy problem, but we have a leadership problem. All what your man said in its intro boils down on poor leadership. The inability of leaders or the lack of capacity or deliberate actions by leaders either to perpetuate themselves in office and then they begin to tamper with the constitution. By the way, these leaders, they campaign as Democrats, but they rule as dictators. So when they begin to do that, like in Benin, but before the coup was crushed, people were already on the street rejoicing. Why would the people rejoice if they love the government? Because the gentleman in Benin has virtually destroyed all political institutions over the last couple of years. And the same thing all over the place. You find that what leaders do, as I said, they campaign as Democrats, but they rule as, they govern as dictators. And so they begin to do a number of things based on personal interests, the desire to perpetuate themselves in office. And in that process, they live doing the right thing, and which is looking after the people's welfare. He talked of transparency, he talked of accountability. We are slipping into poverty, for example, as one of your newspapers said this morning. Why should a country like this with so much resources slip into poverty? Again, poor leadership. So at the heart of what you might describe as the failure of democracy in the continent or West Africa, it's poor leadership. And it cuts across.
Okay.
It cuts across because even the institutions, for example, look, in the United States today, Donald Trump is possibly behaving like an average African leader. he's doing the best he can he loves dictators, so he's doing his best to, behave like one himself. And sometimes I'm sure he wonders why someone like Biya or Putin will stay forever and he will only stay for 4 years. You understand? But because the institutions have been built over the years, they are strong enough to challenge and sustain democracy. The courts are strong enough, confident enough to hold the president accountable to say, no, you have no power to do A, B, C, D. And in that way, they sustain the system.
So in other words, you're saying we have weak institutions.
We have weak institutions because the leaders have made institutions weak, deliberately weak. Look, if you do not weaken the institutions, there's no way you can assume power. Like today in this country, for example, we have virtually destroyed other political parties. It was deliberate. And this, when you look at the history of how dictatorship emerged, that's the first thing you do, destroy the institutions. Because when the institutions are weak, they're in no position to challenge you. That's the leader. And consequently, the leader begins to do everything. But the truth of the matter is that history has taught us that these things do not last forever. Even if you take the history of this country, what is going on now, we saw it in the First Republic, we saw it in the, in the Second Republic and things like that. Somewhere along the line, it collapses for the simple reason that the people themselves do not like it. And that is why anytime there's a coup in any country, people rush out.
But what is the role of the legislative?
Which legislative? They said that's the first thing they do.
Because they are supposed to act as checks and balance,
I was on another program yesterday, I think, and I suggested that, for example, the vetting process, when appointment is made by the president, I suggested that it should be scrapped, removed from the Constitution. I remember a story my young daughter, when she was very young, told me that a pastor went somewhere and told the story of how Jesus said, if they slap you, turn the other cheek. And, and he said something and somebody slapped him and then he turned the other cheek. The guy gave him a good blow and, and that was the end. He got back to his base and said, look, let's remove that chapter from the Bible. You saw the screening of the ambassadorial. That's not the way it was designed to work. Because where we copied the Constitution from, one person could actually be screened for 3-4 days. But here, you screen 60-something people in one day. Just take a bow. And you say they have no
skeleton in their
no
cupboard.
skeleton in it. But then when you go through the papers, for some of them who've been in political offices and so on, there are lots in the papers.
Yes.
So even if the security do not report anything, the papers are there for the legislators.
And the skeletons are there.
The skeletons are there.
Okay. Thank you so much. I like the fact that you say it's not a problem of democracy, but a problem of leadership in West Africa. And we know that ECOWAS and AU was created to sort of, defend democracy. And we're going to go deeper in this conversation. We'll talk about the effectiveness in responding to the recent wave of coups in West Africa. Now let's bring in, we'll have to step out of the studio now to our Lagos studio, where Dr. Nicholas Idris Erame, Senior Research Fellow and Head, International Politics, Nigeria Institute of International Relations, NIIA. You've listened to the opening statement of Ambassador Keshi. Now, the region, is witnessing a systematic sort of failure of democratic governance, in your opinion, or a failure of regional enforcement mechanism? Because yesterday at the meeting of ECOWAS, we had some strong words coming out from the leadership of ECOWAS. Let's get your own opinion on that too.
Thank you so much. If you study very well what the challenge has been, the challenge has always centered around not essentially on democracy, but on the democratization process. Now, when we talk about issues about leaders not trying to, come in the region, coming strong, and while the region's issues have not been adhered to, you understand that right from the period we lost what they call the core essence of the African peer review mechanism, we are faced with a challenge whereby we have an organization, or we have a sub-regional organizations of leaders who themselves are part of the rules, but they don't play by the rules. So if you have a situation like that, what we see is that there's a tendency for some leaders wanting to go out of the rule or to disobey regional positions on issues like that. But of course, it's not unexpected, because most of the issues that have happened within the West African region, what we have seen is that it's more like a contagious effect. So we have a situation whereby some leaders who are also coming under the guise of democratic credentials and other things, they turn out to become worse in terms of expectations. So what we have over time is that, and what the citizens have seen over time is that we have a situation whereby we have just a democratic procedural system, fine, but in terms of expectations, there's been serious there's a gap between what the expectations, and that itself that made people not to be so much keen about these issues. One, it has also created an avenue whereby some leaders themselves have ruled with almost impunity, with the guys that they must not be challenged or they should not be challenged. Now, the region itself is faced with the problem of how do we enforce rules. Now, is this supposed to be a problem? No, it is not supposed to be a problem, because leaders themselves are part of the rules. They are part of the laws, they are part of the norms, they are part of the protocols set up in the region to address or to respond to issues like this. But how then do they respond to these issues, knowing fully well that these rules are already on ground and they also, violate these rules? And that has always been one of the major problems in West Africa. And to the extent that no matter what, or the efforts that other good, well-meaning leaders are trying to do, when we have a situation whereby we have a lot of leaders who are not really abiding by these rules, then we'll just have a situation whereby we have a protocol that's not really being adhered to. And that's exactly the problem we are faced currently in West Africa and the entire Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Rame, for your opening remarks there. We'll get back to you in the course of this conversation. Let's come back to the studio and let's get the perspective of Dr. Ibrahim now. You've listened to the two speakers, and they have attributed the fact that this upsurge is a result of bad governance and leaders not sticking to the rules. From your own perspective, what do you think are the underlying factors, contributing to this upsurge in the military, intervention in West Africa in particular?
Thank you for having me once again. Good morning, all. Let's put it into proper perspective. If you look at the events that are surrounding the coups across the West African bloc, you notice that coup does not just happen. There are factors that trigger them, as the one that is we recently witnessed in Benin Republic. One of those factors that were laid down or stipulated by the plotters are issues surrounding security, and they further lay emphasis on the instability that is being witnessed within this region also. Humanitarian crisis, hunger, issues of leaders assuming a position of authoritarian and dictatorship. And this is not just something that we would think that is unfolding without having a conscious plan by the leaders. Some of them have realized that when the citizens are well enlightened and then their welfareism is taken care of, then they will be able to demand for their rights. So they are weaponizing hunger, so to say. And this is becoming a critical and a uniform system across this West African sub-region. However, they should recognize that we are sitting on a very dangerous, how will I put it?
Gunpowder.
Gunpowder, if this is not nipped under the bud. Because democracy have been celebrated for about 2 decades by ECOWAS. We cannot afford to allow this thing to just slip away. It demands a collective effort by these leaders, and then they should have a rethink and see the founding father of Africa. They were not having this personal and internal vision of just their own nation, but they see Africa first, so that Africa can transform from this my country to becoming a regional bloc that will speak in one voice across the international political system. In as much as we can, the African leaders can realize this, then I think there will be a healthy competition in trying to deliver the dividend of democracy. Simply put, all these issues are resolved around bad governance. And we believe that with this proclamation by ECOWAS, that African leaders will take a cue to do the needful.
Take a cue from where?
From the declaration, because the declaration have advised that they should abide by the principle of democracy and then good governance. So if they will learn from this declaration, I think they will be able to solve this issue of...
But from what Dr. Rama said, I mean, the same people, the same leaders that are supposed to enforce this are the corporates, that the one not sticking to the rules. So what's the way out? Because if you say they should take a cue, so they are the one that are supposed to do the right thing. So
yes, they are the one that are supposed to do the right thing. And if they are not doing as expected, the citizens have a voice, because sovereignty and legitimacy lies in the hands of the citizen. We need more active conversation and public opinion to condemn and equally to protest, because if that should be the last resort that the citizens have, because as Ambassador rightly put it, they have destroyed the fabric of the institutions that are supposed to challenge and check their excesses. So now, the power will now resolve back to the citizens. We cannot just sit and then watch them to destroy the nation that collectively belongs to all of us.
And the political landscape itself, because, you know, what do we tell our children maybe in the next 20, 50 years that we just stood by and allowed things to happen? Ambassador Keshi, people have talked about, it's not just our leadership itself, but there's the effect of the external actors, you know, and, you know, amidst regional sovereignty, you know, and some people say it has sort of affected democratic transition in West Africa, and some also argue that West Africa is becoming a battleground, you know, for global power competition at the expense of democracy. Are we falling prey to external factors in West Africa?
You know, that's I do not subscribe to conspiracy theories, particularly this, and I hope he's not listening. One of my former professors and my boss, Professor Akinyemi, saw me on television one time when I answered a question like this. And I said, no, listen, 60 years of independence, when you take Africa, Ghana is more than that, Nigeria is 65, I think. We can no longer be saying that A, B, C, D is responsible for our problems. If you do not open your window or your doors, the devil won't walk in. It's as simple as that. If you take, for example, I always pity the people of Congo, they are, with all their mineral wealth, why the leaders in that country do not realize that if they control their wealth, that they will make more money, they will be able to develop the country, but they seem to be perpetually, attuned to crisis. No, these crises are not induced by quote and unquote ex-colonial leaders or people intervening. It's we who invariably invite them to intervene because we have not done the right thing in the first instance. We've created crisis in the second instance, and now we are looking for help. So I do not buy this that, foreign. No, look, the foreign nations respond because they also see some, loopholes. And they just see that, okay, take for example, if you want to talk about, I hear, for example, in this current situation we find ourselves in Nigeria that, the United States president is taking action because the Chinese, he wants to challenge the Chinese. No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense because
you are saying our leaders are complicit.
No, they're complicit. If for 60 years, if you have a child of 60 years behaving like a child of 30 or so years, how would you feel in your late 80s or 90s? You will feel completely disappointed with that child, for goodness sake. So how come that we complained in the first, few years of independence that, yes, there was a kind of, power play by, the developed countries, our colonial masters. Then, obviously, at that time, there was an ideological battle between the West and the East. And we fell prey. That's understandable. You can't blame Guinea, for example, that when Guinea, when the French did what they did in Guinea, for example, it was, for example, Nkrumah, who was a friend to the Russians, that came to help Guinea to stabilize. And of course, so you can understand, but should we not have learned over the long years that the stability, the survival of our respective countries depend on us doing the right thing, simply doing the right thing. And what is the right thing? Take a look at our Constitution, for example. As imperfect as some people think our Constitution is, go through that Constitution. There are clearly defined things that leaders need to do to keep this country together, to ensure that the people live united. Very simple. Fairness, justice, equity. The people don't get any of these three. And then you blame foreigners all the time. You say, they want your mineral. What minerals? They can get it anywhere, for goodness sake. No. The problem, again, I keep emphasizing has to do with the fact that our leaders are the main culprit, as you rightly put it. And until we find a way to resolve that leadership problem across board. And I go back again to say that in areas where, look, when you go through the history of Europe, there was a time they had the 80-years-old war. In fact, the EU was created as a result of efforts to end perpetual war in Europe. And you can see for how many years now, there's been no war in Europe until Putin and Europe has completely changed. There was a time Europe fought for 80 years continuously. But look at where they are today. They've built democratic institutions. Every leader has, if it's 4 years, you spend 4 years, you leave. If it's 5 years, you spend 5 years. They have periodical elections. There's been nobody complaining anywhere that elections are rigged. No INEC to decide anybody's, future and things like that. But these same people you are accusing, by the way, are spending a lot of money to help your democratic process stabilize. They are spending a lot of money. They want to trade with you. They want to be part of your development because they are putting in money to help you one way or the other. So you can't take their money, run an election that fails, and then turn around to say, oh, they are looking for your... What minerals? I hear these things all the time, and you know, I just think it's intellectually lazy for us to be making that kind of argument. We must situate the problem where it is until there's a change, mindset change across board of our leaders. You talked of the agreement that was just, I mean, the proclamation yesterday by ECOWAS leaders. I was listening to President Mada Abiu read this thing yesterday, and I was smiling to myself. We've written some of these things in the past. It's just a rehash of what has been said in the past. And immediately after the conference, the leaders forget what they said, and then they go back, sorry to say, to their bad ways. And this is why I make the point, anytime there's a coup in any country, the people rejoice. Why do they rejoice? Because they just feel that, look, hopefully the next government will do better.
Learned their lessons.
Yes, you know, that the incoming government will learn their lesson. But unfortunately, it does not also happen because the new guys begin to play their own games after a while.
Coups,
you know,
it's not the way out.
No,
they're worse.
Coup is not the way out.
Yeah.
But somehow it has people rejoice because they do not see any way out. Look, if there's a coup in Cameroon, for example, will you be surprised? The people will jump into the street and rejoice because they've had one man for 40-something years. The same in Uganda. In fact, the man in Uganda is saying that, oh, is the Gen Z that wants him to run. He's not campaigning. They're using his effigy. And then you tell me that the people are happy with that? No. Then you lock up opposition leaders and run an election where you are the only candidate. And then you say that there should be no coup in those areas. No. So at the end of the day, you see the manipulation of the leaders, their efforts to perpetuate themselves in office, their selfishness, their lack of concern. He's talked of security. How do you explain, even in this country, that for 15 years we've not been able to solve a security problem? Then you begin to ask yourself, what problems can we solve?
Indeed.
We can solve life problem and you know, and the rest of it. So let's not blame foreigners. It's like husband and wife having problems, and you are blaming us when the problem is inside the house.
Yes, we need you know, every nation needs to, you know, to sort of, you know, look at the big elephant in the room, and which we all know it's corruption. Let's bring in Dr. Rame into this conversation now. We've talked about accountability and credibility of governance in West Africa, and there have been coups surrounding Nigeria, sort of right now in the middle of it all, and coup leaders in those countries that have had coups argue that democracy failed to address insecurity itself. And now ECOWAS had a platform yesterday to sort of issue strong words to countries who have coups in their countries. Now, how do ECOWAS and the AU, how can they respond, you know, to this narrative that these coup plotters in those countries around West Africa are saying that tackling insecurity and tackling corruption is key to having a stabilized democracy in the region?
That regardless of what we say about coups, or maybe some civilians come to the street to jubilate, for me it's more like a temporary respite. Coups are coups, and coups are not to be tolerated into.
All right.
Has gone there.
Okay.
Can you respond to that? Yes.
Okay. Can you please?
Okay.
Yeah. Coup leaders are arguing that accountability. Yes. Okay. Oh, is he back? He's not there.
Oh, okay. They said he's back.
He's back. Okay.
Today is that we might have to live for a long time with mixed government, some civilian, some military themselves. And this is not necessarily because the military themselves have been able to address the problem, but it is the fact that at a particular time in the history of our democratic settings, most of the countries themselves feel that there's a serious alienation within the civilian elites. Now, come to think about it within the military context, the most bothering question that would ask ourselves, have we been able to address the problem? The answer is also no. So it means that there's a systemic and there's a fundamental problem about governance. We have a governance crisis, we have a leadership issue, either at the civilian level or at the level of the military. So if ECOWAS accepts this as a challenge, we need to say, okay, what then do we do? After all, it's not only military coups we have also seen civilian coups, whereby some civilian elites who had come on board through democratic elections have over time shifted the goalposts, adjusted the electoral timetables so that it can accommodate them to run 2 terms, 3 terms, and 4 terms. And that themselves is also civilian coup. But all these issues come back to, first, the kinds of disposition we have about governance, the kinds of disposition we have in terms of citizens and government relations. First, what do we understand about the whole concept about democracy? 1. 2, what are the major expectations from us? And to what extent do we think that leaders themselves are moving in that direction? And 4, what is ECOWAS really doing? And sometimes we talk about ECOWAS as an abstract organization, but don't forget that ECOWAS itself, it's an organization of the same leaders. So if we have leaders who are adjusting the electoral timetable of their countries to accommodate them for second, third term and other issues, and we also have military leaders who had also come on board military coups and also do the same, you see that what then it means is that there's a fundamental problem. Now, how is this problem? First, it's a good thing ECOWAS is coming out to make a statement, but beyond that, because just like Ambassador Jokeshi said, most of these statements themselves had been made in the past. So it's more like a rehearsal issue or, just emphasizing words that have been said before. Now, if West Africa is to be more stable, we need to have a strong understanding that democracy is in game, 1. 2, we need to have people who believe in the system, who are able to run the system. And don't forget that if we take it very well, the kind of issues we are even talking about in Africa, democracy, is not even about the whole concept about democracy. What we are celebrating so far is what they call electoral democracy. So for some leaders, so far we are able to conduct regular elections themselves and do some few things. That is democratization itself. But it goes beyond that. But of course, Africa itself is a growing. We are abiding by these issues slow by slow. Now we need to say, okay, let's first achieve that extent before we begin to push to other parts of democracy, issues about human security, issues about economic freedom, issues about welfareism, and some other things like that. So it boils down that the ECOWAS itself has a lot to do. The ECOWAS itself, over time, has been seen more to being reactive than being proactive. If we look at some of the coups we have also had, some of the arguments by these military leaders who have taken over power, and even their citizens, that the ECOWAS itself is not cognizant or does not take into cognizance their core challenges. And for them, ECOWAS only respond to their country issues whenever civilian elites are being pushed out. So in other words, their understanding about the ECOWAS is that it's more like an organization that is protecting corporate interests of elites as compared to what it is being expected to do. So one thing is a good thing that ECOWAS had made this pronunciation again, but there's a need for ECOWAS to move beyond just mere pronunciation to ensure that it is strict with its pronunciations. Take, for instance, in the recent coup that just happened in Benin, you see how ECOWAS responded to it swiftly. Perhaps because of the past experience, they have seen that their non-ability to respond to these issues promptly themselves might have either escalated the issues or might have also ensured that other nations follow suit. So ECOWAS has a lot to do. ECOWAS needs to move beyond rhetoric to say that it should be more pragmatic in terms of ensuring that leaders themselves adhere to most of these pronunciations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arame, for that, your submission there. Let's come back to the studio now. Dr. Ibrahim, you've listened to Ambassador Keshi and Dr. Arame there, and their submission is that the people that are making the laws are the one flouting it, and there is need for us to strengthen our institutions, you understand? So how do we begin to strengthen the institutions to ensure that the leaders are held accountable, for their actions? And the need for us to have, a kind of a mindset, a change, reorientation of the mind of our leaders. What is the way out? What do you suggest?
No, I think we can strengthen the institutions by firstly strengthening the capacity of the leaders. We can make other reforms, most especially in the area of elections, an act that governs electioneering, campaigns, spending, educating the voters. And away from that, we could equally do this, which I think is a nuanced approach or perspective, by bringing in this peer-to-peer learning from other African countries, even if it's beyond West Africa. Because if you just narrow it within the West African region, for leaders to be able to learn among themselves, the challenge is that where did they learn from? But we can see beyond West Africa, some countries, maybe like Kigali and Rwanda, where the president is doing well, they could have conversations where leaders can see what they are doing and how they are bettering their own country. Because in as much as they have the ability and the money to equally relocate to other countries, Nigerians still remain their country. So they cannot afford to destroy their own country and go elsewhere to stay as second citizen. So this conversation needs to be pushed further among the West African community. Again, we could engage more of the civil society, since the civil society are closer to the people, and then they know where the real situations are. They could educate the masses to know that their voting is their own power and how they are supposed to utilize this voting power, and equally challenge some of the policies by the leaders, not in form of pressurizing them, just to lay more emphasis, like you follow their activities, their programs, and then you make criticism where it is important for you to do. So I think we can leverage on all of this, all these issues that I have just mentioned, and then the leaders will be able to learn from there.
In many ways, we've had civil society, coming out to challenge some of the actions of, sitting, leaders and all that. But there hasn't been any, significant, change in the way, they do things, especially in this part of the continent. So how do we begin to empower the people? Because right now, the institutions are weakened. What is the way out? How do we empower the people to hold the leadership accountable for their actions?
Yes, I think we can empower the people by first and foremost educating them. If you look at the level of educated people across Nigeria and West Africa, there are a lot of people that are disadvantaged educationally. So this will affect them because they will not be enlightened. And when you are not enlightened, you don't see the need for you to participate actively in act of governance. You just see it as their own thing, and then this is our own thing. And you see, for example, in some part of Nigeria, when government made some developmental project, the citizens start celebrating and then praising the government as if the money is coming out of their pocket. But in climes that are more enlightened, they question the projects, whether it is up to standard, whether there is accountability in the way it's been implemented, and a host of other things. But in Nigeria, they just see it as you are celebrating the government for things that are their own responsibility.
And you're right as a
and
citizen.
They're right, because as a citizen, we have this collective ownership of our own country. And then if you're a responsible citizen that is even paying your taxes and obeying the law. So these are things that the government is supposed to do. So education is very germane in this area, that people need to be educated because it makes them to be more enlightened, and it will now increase their active participation in act of governance.
Active participation in act of governance. I like that when you said that. You also suggested that we can go beyond West Africa and learn from other countries how they were able to stabilize, like Rwanda, where the president is doing well. Ambassador Keshi, and that brings us to the two bodies that sort of West Africa. They have the Sahel, and then we have the EU. And ECOWAS and EU, have they aligned in their approach to addressing issues like that beyond West Africa? And are there visible policy paths that both bodies need to take, come on the table and say, this is how Africa should be? This is how Africa's democracy should be. We've had democracy in Africa, even if before the colonial masters came to Africa. We had a democracy thriving in most of the regions there before we became nations. So how can they align and come together to be able to tackle this issue?
No, I think the EU and ECOWAS, they are aligned very well on what needs to be done with the Sahel, I personally think that the people of the Sahel, they need help in addressing the security situation, which, by the way, it's already, traveling down to upper Benin. And regrettably, we also have a border with Benin. So you can almost imagine that if it gets worse, that could also spill into Nigeria. That is, if it has not done so, done so already. But at the end of the day, look, every nation has to take the responsibility to act on its own behalf and in its own interest. So if, for example, in the Sahel, the issue is security, and that's why I sometimes think that the Burkina Faso leaders are not wise in the way they are behaving. Rather than being antagonistic, what they should have done is seek help, from ECOWAS to address this problem. And they can make a good case to say, look, if we do not address this problem today, it will affect you sometime in the near future. So we all have to collectively come together and address this, this issue. And I just think that they need to realize the fact that first they need regional support even before they go to the Russians, the Chinese, or the Americans, because at the end of the day, these guys are not going to put boots on the ground. And only ECOWAS could put boots on the ground. But it's something that collectively they have to act together, because Europeans have a far more wider reach to be able to address the other side in terms of the flow of arms and ammunition into the region. Okay. While we can take care of the other problem of finding a way to deal with this issue. But look, I've always believed that, difficult and challenging as it might be for us, not just in this country, but every country on the West Coast, I think the first question is we should ask ourselves is, what exactly do we want to make of our nation? And if we agree, people call it elite consensus, if we agree that this is what we want to do with our nation, we set the parameters and focus on doing exactly that. And I again make the point that as imperfect as most of the constitutions constitutions may be, there are elements there that could enable the leaders to act to the best interests of everybody in the country. After all, what exactly is government? First, to provide security. Second, the welfare of the people. And this too has been a problem for so many years. So the day the elites agree fundamentally on a number of issues, but they must lay down the rules and say, no, you cannot violate this rule, and things like that. Look, think of the years gone by in this country. When Chief Obafemi Awolowo, for example, started free education, the East came out with a variant of free education. The North began to pay people to go to school. So you could see how the leaders of then were thinking. They just realized that we needed to do A, B, C, D. And when they, again, the same Southwest Western region established television, the East responded with color television. So it was as if the leaders of those days did realize that, look, they needed to move development in a steady manner until they... Let nobody make a mistake. I'm not in support of any military takeover, because the problems actually we have today were created by the military. The military across board, across the region, cannot exonerate itself from the problems we have today in the sub-region. Because when you go through the eastern part of the continent and the southern, they've relatively been democratic, stable in terms of, they've been growing all over and they're making reasonable progress and things like that. So we have to agree, first of all, look, exactly what do we want to do with ourselves? If we agree that these are the things we want to do, then we set the parameters. It's like your dad saying to you, you cannot do A, B, C, D. And you know the consequences of doing A, B, C, D. So the laws are there, by the way. Go read our laws. The laws are there. The Constitution, again, I make the point, as imperfect as it is, has provided enough to enable us do a lot. He talked of mobilizing the citizens. Look, the citizens are disenchanted. There's a disconnect. Anytime you see a crowd rallying a governor, they've been given money to come to that event. And that's one of those ways that people take the money, because to them, it's not the governor's money. They know where that money is coming from, by the way. And they say, well, look, it's not all the time that the governor comes to open something in our place, so why shouldn't we take the money? Because we might not even see them again for a long, long, long time. So our leaders and the elites themselves have to come to a consensus. What do we want to do with this country? And this is a consensus we must come to, not just because of us today, but we should realize that our children and grandchildren, if we leave them with this problem, it's even going to be more challenging. And by the way, I know many of them are not even ready to take up the responsibility. I had this challenge from my kids and their friends. I did say to them one day in a conversation that, our time is over. You guys are going to try and solve some of these problems. And one of them was when I say, Daddy, no. Please, you guys solve the problems you created before you go.
They are not ready to take over.
Solve the problems you created before you go. And I've never forgotten that conversation. And that's what our leaders must have in their mind. Because the more we continue to do what is happening today, creating complicated situations when the issues are very simple. What is there in ensuring that everybody has education? What is there in ensuring that we have regular life? What is there in making our hospitals run very well? All over the world, these things do happen. So if there's that elite consensus and not the fact that I want power for myself, for my family, I want influence, I can influence, so that I can remain within that power corridor and things like that. No. The day we remove selfishness and focus on ensuring that everybody is happy, the happiness of the people should be the focus. And we're not just talking of a few, which is what is happening now. but of the vast majority of the people of this country.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
You've raised a lot of pertinent questions.
Well, we have some comments and questions from some of our viewers. We want to just remind our viewers that you can send in your questions and comments. You can also, take part in this conversation. Let's read out some of these comments so that Dr. Rame in our Lagos studio can respond to some of this. This one is from, Goso Boniface from Orozo in Abuja. And he says, I wish to agree with one of the guests in the studio. Democracy in Africa or West Africa is not really suffering, but the leadership system in Africa is compromising democratic system of Africa. If we have leaders who are willing to fulfill their political manifestos, which the masses have seen beneficial during campaign before voting them into power, and allowing the masses to remind them of their promises, the democratic system will be restored. Now, Ajayi Tunde Moses is from Oroshoki, Lagos. He said, the problem in our democracy is not only leadership, it is inclusive, a situation where a particular tribe is protecting somebody to be punished. External forces are using guerrillas to destabilize in order to satisfy themselves. It is not easy winning the guerrillas, not even the USA. That's Ajayi Tunde Moses. Okay.
Yes, Dr. Orame, can you respond to some of those comments sent in by a guest?
Regarding the first comment, he actually captures the whole issues very well because, like I earlier said, democracy itself is a concept. If democracy is going to be sustained today, if we're going to have a good democratization process, it is because we have leaders who are ready to play by the rules, and it's because we have potent laws that are well established, and it's because we have a strong political institutions, either at the level of the institutions saddled with responsibilities to conduct elections, or the judiciary, or we also have what they call an active mass citizens. And why do we need this? Of course, it is we can also argue that the masses seems to have been defeated. But you see, in this kind of context, within the African context, where democracy itself, it seems more in terms of elections alone and not other aspects of democracy where we have over time had some leaders that really don't feel to be challenged and everything like that. If the masses eventually give up in this context, we are only just giving room for some leaders to eventually perpetuate whatever they choose to perpetuate. Even though poverty, it does appear that poverty has been weaponized and other things like that. There's no other way we can get this thing done than to say there must be concerted efforts by the citizens to ensure that we hold leadership accountable. And good thing, if you look at our democracy over time and how they have progressed in West Africa or in Africa, even though we agree that we are not really moving very forward, but we still cannot shy away from the fact that the masses in some aspects have been able to, come out in mass to protest some of these actions by the leader, which itself has forced these leaders into reconsidering their decisions. So what am I saying in a nutshell? We might feel disappointed by the kinds of democratic dividends that have come over time. There might be alienation, there might be mass apathy in terms of elections and other things like that. There's still no way. There's no way. No country would, no citizen would leave their own country to help you respond to the issues in your country. So, be that as it may, it means that the citizens themselves must see this as a project, because in the whole context about democracy itself, it's more like a project where everybody's hands must be on desk. So the citizens themselves have no other choice than to remain active in this game. Thank you so much. That's one. Then two, the other person talked about the issues about guerrilla warfare and other things like that, if I'm very clear about it. Yeah, he made a very fundamental problem. And for me, he said maybe just a part of the issues we had about our democratization process, which falls around the issues about insecurity and some other things like that. And good thing, he also mentioned the fact that some of these wars, some of these guerrilla wars, some of these insurgents are not really, they are not issues that we are able to deal with just as they appear. because even Western countries, even stronger countries who appear to be much more technologically sophisticated than we do, have not been able to address these issues so well. But in that respect too, we must see that when we're able to address leadership issues, when we're able to draw about expectations, we would have leaders themselves who are able to look into the face of some of these issues and to say, no, we have to deal with these issues side by side. And when there's that leadership muscle to do that, trust me, there's going to be followership support to say, yeah, because everybody admits that this is a strong challenge, and if we think that moving forward, we need to move forward, then we need to come together, to fight these challenges. But everything, like I said, also boils down to the quality of leadership that we really expect in West Africa.
The quality of leadership of West Africa needs to be concrete. We'll be taking a break now. When we return, we'll be talking about pathways to civilian rule in West Africa. We'll be right back.
The Renewed Hope Initiative RHI presents the RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow. This national competition is in 3 categories. The household category is a tree planting competition amongst 11 frontline states in northern Nigeria. Each participating household in Adamawa, Borno, Bauchi, Gombe, Jigawa, Kano, Katsina, Kebbi, Sokoto, Yobe, and Zamfara states will plant a minimum of 1 tree to qualify, with a video evidence of before and after the tree planting exercise. 20 million naira would be awarded to the best household. Submission deadline is 20th December 2026. Community category will see local governments, local communities, schools, and NGOs reclaim and transform degraded or abandoned areas such as dump sites, landfills, parks, and their likes into green, vibrant gardens, parks, and eco-friendly spaces. 50 million naira would be awarded to the overall best community group. Deadline for submission is 15th July 2026. State category will have all states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, excluding Enugu State, have a chance to address the growing threats to environmental sustainability and cleanliness. States will be judged based on the number of trees planted on major roads and inner streets and how clean they are. 100 million naira will be awarded to the best performing state. Already, Enugu State has 100 million naira for being RHI's model green state due to its greenery and cleanliness. Video evidence must be submitted by participating states on or before 20th December 2026. All entries must be directed to RHI Office, State House, Abuja, or email rhi.greenchallenge@statehouse.gov.ng. RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow.
Africa, a land of passion, pride, and power. Across this vast continent, the game runs deep. In every back alley, beach, and pitch, a billion hearts beat to one rhythm, the Africa Cup of Nations. We remember the kings of Cairo, when Zambia shocked the world, when Nigeria soared, the dreamers of Yaoundé, when Senegal stood tall, last time the elephants rose. From the thunder of Casablanca to the lights of Marrakech, the stage is set in Morocco. This is where the past meets the present, where new stories begin. 24 nations, 1 trophy, but no script.
Oh, what a strike!
The drums return. The ground shakes. The continent rises. This is AFCON 2025.
32 matches, every Super Eagles game, all live.
This is ours.
Afro Sport, your freedom of sport.
You're welcome back, and I have a set of contributions from our viewers now, so that our guests can, respond to them. Let me begin with Prince Ezidi. He said, "Ambassador has spoken well. If our institutions are working, democracy will be sustained, but our leaders are the real problems we have here." And Samela Kef has said, "Good morning, Haji Jumai and Ambassador Keshi. May God bless you. Ambassador, for telling the Nigerians the truth. You are the only Nigerian that speak the truth. May you be my mentor, and may I connect with you, Ambassador, for more lectures. My name is Samaila Kefas from Gogalada, Abuja." And another one wrote that my colleague, Ambassador Keshi, has hit the nail on the head. Elite consensus. Perhaps what he did not add is that Nigeria itself is the product of elite consensus. The founding fathers of Nigeria had a choice during the nationalist struggles to break up the country, like India and Pakistan at independence, but intentionally and deliberately decided to stay together and build a nation. This is same for other West African countries. We who are in charge today must rebuild the consensus that is doable. That's Dr. Godknows Igali, Ambassador and retired Permanent Secretary.
Look, Ambassador Igali, it's right. In fact, it crossed my mind when I was speaking that was the only time we had this consensus among the leaders. And I think that, again, is part of the problem. Where you consider the leaders of those days, look, they had an agenda. And despite the fact that sometimes people criticize them, they had one objective. And the objective was to secure independence for their respective countries, and they did. Like in Nigeria here, there were a lot of disagreement, but the leaders collectively agreed that this is what they want to do. But again, that was based on a federal structure in which every region at that time had the power to run its own region the way, but collectively everybody governs from the center. But the military came, broke up this, and they not put enough mechanism to ensure that we retain that federal structure as it was before. And to a large extent, that is also probably why we still have all these disagreements and things like that. Then they changed the constitution from parliamentary to presidential, which today I don't even know which is, which is worse, But when I look at the British Parliament and the fact that every Wednesday, for example, the Prime Minister has to go and answer questions. I just think that, look, we probably made a mistake. We were probably in a hurry because the presidential system has been more of a problem than an asset to us. So he's probably right. We need to recreate that consensus, and only the elites they can do that. And they have to be sincere if they really love this country. Look, what most people do not realize is that you can live in the villa as much as you can. You can build a house and have all the security, get the police, the soldier to guide you. Fair enough, you are protected. But the minute you leave your house to go to the airport, you have no control of what will happen to you. So that makes it imperative for all of us to realize that we have an obligation to come to a consensus on what this country should look like. Look, on one of my visits to Singapore, there was a committee that was set up by a man who was described as a very highly intelligent person to visualize what Singapore will look like in 50 years. That's exactly what we should be doing in this country. Not all these things we are doing today, heading to nowhere. No. Some people should sit down and make a recommendation, or the government itself should call a few people to say, look, what exactly? Oh, by the way, we have I think, a development plan that was completed under the Buhari administration, I think for 2050 or something like that. Nobody refers to that document. And it was put in place by an APC government. So we must all come together.
We've always had a problem of continuity.
Exactly. So we must come together and begin to ask questions about the future of this country. And if we all agree, look, I have traveled extensively around this country. I'm not sure when you go on the street, anybody is interested in breaking away. To be candid, I can tell you the fact that left alone, Nigerians will remain as one. But for them to consolidate that, we must create the structures. We must create the environment for them to remain as one. So the man who is producing tomatoes, yam, and everything from Jos or from Plateau can take his way to Port Harcourt or to Lagos without paying so much on the road, increasing the cost. And at the end of the day, no profit is made. So these are some of the things that we need to come agree among ourselves that this is the way we need to run this country. And by the way, look, if we are fair, if we are just, and if we are equitable to everybody in this country, this would be a wonderful country.
If we are fair, just, and equitable, it will be a wonderful, country for everybody. Dr. Ibrahim, let's bring you in. The issue of trust now is just a major issue now that has, is one of the major challenge that we have, especially in this region. Citizens don't even trust the government when they give their promises and they don't go by those promises. And what do you think can be done, especially now that we have more ECOWAS and the AU in creating a balance of trust and accountability? What can be done?
I think the leaders can go back and take a look at their campaign promises, because it is on that the electorate voted them in. So leveraging on this, the leaders will be able to bring in those laudable campaign promises that they have issued out during their electoral campaigns, and then this will rekindle the level of trust in them. Ambassador captured it rightly when he said issue of equity. I think there is this institute that says federal character in appointments, in everything that have to do with Nigerian nation. Are we really implementing this? Are the appointments lopsided that is now bringing this suspicion? And when the people cry, they try to suppress their voices. So if the government can have this good intention by looking at their campaign promises, it's not a rocket science. They should just implement them and give a time frame, and people will be able to see that, yes, this government is working. And that will now rekindle the trust in them. If I want to cite a very good example with our sporting institution, most especially football, Nigerians don't usually have grievances in the selection of
who is doing what?
Well, because they know that the coaches and those playing are rightly chosen. So we are united in hunger, in insecurity, in everything that have to that affects us. So anyone that will be able to put in policies, implement reforms that is going to tackle all of these challenges, I can bet you that people will not even bother about his tribe, his religion, or his ethnic affiliation. So these are germane questions that the leaders need to look at and then try to implement.
Indeed, and we also saw it apart from football, that that's when Nigerians come together to celebrate. And we also saw what happened when General Christopher was nominated by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to take over the defense. If we can all come together, on the table, all hands on deck, I believe, civilian rule in West Africa will be sustained. Now let's, Dr. Irame, let's talk about the pathways now to civilian rule back into Nigeria. We've seen the Sahel break away from ECOWAS. How can ECOWAS, bring back the Sahel state to the table? And what concrete, timelines or benchmarks should define, a credible transition to civilian rule in West Africa?
Thank you so much. In the heat of the breakup of these three nations out of the ECOWAS, there had been all kinds of concerns both within and outside the continent. And truth enough to ECOWAS, because I attended a program where ECOWAS had to bring out these issues side by side, the grievances of these nations. And in all fairness, ECOWAS appears to have addressed almost 85, if not 90% of the issues they have raised. But of course, they have still decided to, be on their own because they are sovereign nations, and that falls within their rights, their sovereign rights, to either become part of ECOWAS or not. But what is fundamental is that they are still within the African region, and they are still our neighbors. We interact with them in one way or the other. And let's not forget that one of the reasons why they also ensured that they formed this organization was to assert their sovereign rights, and was to also assert the fact that they also think that ECOWAS itself is not sensible to their core challenges. And that itself was a lesson to the ECOWAS as an organization on that issue. And there have been all kinds of arguments to say they are going to join us anytime soonest, and some say they are not going to join us anytime soonest. But for me, I think that much as ECOWAS has done everything to bring them back, these countries have continued to remain adamant of joining the ECOWAS. Rather, they have shown some dexterity of wanting to be alone and to sustain the AES, which is one other issue. But on issues like this, the ECOWAS, the African leaders must never be tired of sustained engagements, because these are countries who really want to show that they are sovereign, and these are leaders who needed to show that the same power you have as the president of Nigeria, the president of any other country in Africa, is the same power they also amass. So there are so many things involved in these issues, which we don't expect these issues to be addressed just anytime soonest. But what I think is that the ECOWAS itself, the AU leaders themselves, must never be tired of sustained engagement within this country. And this is because, whether you like it or not, whether they are in AES, West Africa, will face a peculiar problem that can be best addressed collectively. That's on the one hand. Then on the other hand again, the ECOWAS must also ensure that they are not really trying to enforce on them to return, but they show some promises or some promising notes, or in terms of actions, the kinds of actions they have carried over time, that alone shows that it's more like a point to say that, oh, this ECOWAS appears to have addressed, or appears to have improved compared to where we left the ECOWAS, and by so doing, we think that with time we're going to join them. So, but if you look at the issues on ground, then there are no basis of setting a timeline, because these are not issues we set timeline, because the AES countries are going on their own. They are waking up every day. They are doing their own activities, just like the ECOWAS or so. But we think that in regional integration, we need everybody to be together. And if that be the case, we need to say that instead of setting timelines, we will rather forget about timelines and focus on sustained engagement before they can really come about that place. One. Then two, again, you talked about the whole issue about military coups and other things in West African region, and how these things could be addressed or could be abated. In all sincerity, it doesn't appear that we have seen the end of coups in West Africa, and that does not mean that coups are to be tolerated. But what is fundamental, like I earlier said, is that those countries that have not fallen to military rule, it now behoves on their leadership to learn from the experiences of those that have fallen to military rule, and to begin to to imbibe basic democratic principles. We need to have leaders that first act by the rules of the game. One, we need to have leaders who put the country ahead of any other thing. We need to have civilian leaders who believe in democratic principles, and not those who are ready to either subvert some political institutions or to ensure that they are able to, adjust their timelines, because those kinds of tendencies themselves also attract military coup. That's one. Then two, those countries that are falling to military rule, we need to also sustain engagement with them, because it is much more important, because in some of the cases, what we saw is that the civilians themselves came out to the street to jubilate. And it therefore means that within the gales of coups that are taking place in recent times, it appears to be redoing, or what I call rewriting the narrative about our earlier perceptions about coups that would involve blood killings and violent overthrows. It means that in this context, those kinds of thresholds are no longer there. And let's not forget that governance itself has to do with the citizen. So far, the citizens themselves say they're okay with the military leaders for now. We need to respect that decisions for now. Then we also begin to talk to them, not in a very combative manner, but in a very, very much engaging manner, to say that, well, we agree that you are doing well, but there's nowhere we can continue to go by this way. You need to show us what you mean by transition. What are your plans to return the country back to democratic rule? And we need to also look at these plans side by side, and also state what part ECOWAS could do in supporting them in returning back to democratic rule. So, but at this point, there's no need of trying to force them to return, or force some countries not to fall under military rule. The ones ECOWAS can respond to immediately, just like they did in Benin Republic, it's a fine idea. But when we have issues like that, and they're not able to marshal some of those kinds of interventions that was done in Benin, we need to engage these countries, engage with them, and sustain engagement so that they can return back to democratic rule. Thank you so much.
Rame, we need to sustain the engagement so that they can go back to democratic rule. All right, thank you for your submission there. We'll come back to the studio as we begin to round up this discussion. Ambassador Keshi, earlier on you talked about the youth being disenchanted with these developments, in the region, and asking you to go and solve your problem, don't leave it for them. How do we begin to, integrate the youth into political leadership and decision making? How do we begin to, draw them into, engage them? What do we do?
I think two things that we need to do. Number one, it's expand education for all as much as we can, just like the leaders did in the 60s and the 70s. We should also begin to ensure that the youths, they are not just at the periphery. They are not just being used as microphone or loudspeakers during campaigns, but that they are properly integrated, into the political, system itself. But my greatest fear today is that I see some of the youths that are members of the various political parties, and regrettably, I'll say this, they are not going to behave better than the leaders. Because look, it's a process of socialization. It's like what they say in sociology. If you were born into the den of criminals, chances are that you end up being a criminal. Okay? So, in fact, part of what is happening to the Nigerian political system from 1999 is that some of the early governors of that end saw the way military governors behaved. And since then, that's exactly the way they've been behaving. So these ones coming are more interested in resource, money, fast cars, and things like that, and so on, that you begin to wonder whether we are preparing them for leadership. So we should look into the educational curriculum and see, how we can really, retune the mindset, of our younger ones. And unfortunately, they are also being influenced by the modernity, the global public communication. So it's, and to my friend before I end, you were talking of fulfilling your manifesto. There was a cartoon by The Punch many years ago after election that says, now the election is over, you can change your promises.
Yes, in just 30 seconds, if democracy, is to return and survive in West Africa now, what must change? Regional leadership, national governance, or citizens' expectation? In 30 seconds, so Orlando.
I think the commitment still lies on the leader. ECOWAS can make reforms, educate, but if there's no leadership will, all of this will be jeopardized. So we need leaders that will be committed to this vision and then be ready to implement them.
Okay, be ready to implement them. Dr. Abdulrazak Salu Ibrahim, Department of Political Science and International Relations, Nile University. Thank you so much for your time. It's when the program wants to end, that's when the conversation becomes interesting indeed. And Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thank you so much as usual for your insight into this conversation. And Dr. Nicholas Idris Erame, Senior Research Fellow and Head International Politics, Nigeria Institute of International Affairs, NIIA. He joined us from our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for your contribution to this conversation. I believe it's going to be an ongoing conversation indeed. Thank you so much. And that's Good Morning Nigeria today. Thanks so much for your time. And on behalf of the production crew and everybody involved here, I am Juma Yusuf. Thanks so much for watching.
And I'm Ademola. You do have a lovely day.